spell it for me, please?
Fabiola Jean-Louis, Fabiola-Louis.
Your official title, is it okay if we use you as artist?
I'm an artist.
All right, so tell me a little bit about what your work in this room today.
This work is titled Rewriting History. It's a series that's about a lot of things. Primarily, it's to talk about injustice, to talk about history. It's also to celebrate the Black female body and inserting us into scenarios that we've not seen before. But also, it's a juxtaposition of sort of changing the reality as we know it. So while inserting women of color in these scenarios, also putting it side by side next to the actual reality of what we know happened.
Why is that important?
Well, because memory is important. It's important to remember what happened. You know, I firmly believe in that saying, in order to know where you're going, you have to know where you come from. And the African experience, or the Black experience, is not linear, right? So it's important, while analyzing history in America, to also look at, you know, European history, just to try to analyze how we ended up where we are. At the same time, it's extremely important to celebrate the Black body. And I always say female body because I'm a woman, so that's what I know most and feel most comfortable representing. And also because the Black female body has always been fetishized. So it's to take that away for a moment and really just show our beauty.
And tell me about, what have you used to create these pieces of art?
Paper. I started working with paper at the same time that I thought up the concept of rewriting history. So at first there were, you know, some of the jewelry was still jewelry, was, you know, metals. But then as the series progressed, I started making the jewelry out of paper, the props, everything. So at this point, I think just about only the flowers are not paper.
How long did it take you to do all this?
All of this current series that we have, or just one piece?
Both. How long does it take you to do one in the series, and then the whole thing in this room, the whole exposition in this room?
Wow, time is interesting because I don't sketch anything down. So everything is created in my head. I design in my head. And so that affects the way time is, because it naturally takes longer to put something out. I would say one dress can take 4 or 5 months to create, but at the same time, I'm also conceptualizing the set, you know, the story, everything, which I do by myself as well. So I would say about 5 months just for one photograph.
And I'm going to move the camera, so hold up. For African American women's experiences, you were talking about that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's a dumb question, please
I'm going to answer it as honest as I can, the way that I can.
All right, I'm ready when you are.
You know, it's hard to say how specifically in one way how my art relates to the African American woman's experience. Because I was born in Haiti, and so I don't identify as an African American woman. I identify as Afro-Caribbean, or just Caribbean, or Afro-Cuban. And so those experiences are very different, right? But we are always going to find something that is relative to the other. And what I can say is that what we have in common is suffering. What we have in common is being treated unjustly and being fetishized. And so those are the things that I think links it. No matter where you're looking at it.
And how does, sorry, I'm just fire me for a second. All right. Can I ask a question? Yeah. So why specifically did you choose the Renaissance period?
Well, I've always had a love for that period. So my love for the corset didn't begin with this series. I was on the goth scene as a teenager for a long, long time. And on that scene, you know, you wear corsets and heels, and it's very reminiscent of that period. And so I always had this love for the corset. I've been wearing them since. And so that's where my love for it began. But then, you know, moving forward, I would often go to the museums and look at these amazing paintings and these Renaissance paintings of these women wearing these gowns. And so my love for those paintings really is what inspired the series. And the fact that we were absent, Black women were absent, we were never portrayed in that. And so rewriting history really becomes this contemporary way of presenting a painting. So instead of, you know, using paint and brush like the old masters, I'm using camera and Photoshop to paint in Photoshop to do what I was loving in the museum.
And I was kind of curious, what do you want people to take away from this, from your art?
It's hard to answer that, you know, because art is art. Everyone is going to take away what they want, what they can take away from it. What I hope they see is that I am always doing my best to be honest about the stories that I'm telling. I hope that they see power in the work, and power and beauty in the Black female body and subject. I also hope that they understand that I'm using beauty as a vehicle to talk about a very ugly reality and truths, and that they're emotionally and mentally impacted by the work. However that translates to them, you know, at the end of that, that's up to them, but at least I hope that happens.
And why is it important to use beauty to talk about an ugly part of history?
Well, you know, our society has become really desensitized in so many ways. Social media hasn't helped. And when specifically talking about how the Black body has been treated, we're so used to seeing blood and gore when it comes to how we're treated. So, you know, like you can go on TV and see being shot to death. Media doesn't do anything to hide that. And because of the way it's been easy to show our suffering, it's just something that's also, as important as it is for us to see it and know, it's also caused us to be desensitized. You know, it's just another person of color suffering. And I felt that showing our reality of injustice through beauty was a different way of going about that it was more powerful in a sense, because now the conversation opens up to more people. So it's not trying to get the attention of just people of color, but also saying, you know, everybody can really look at this and be open to having a conversation about trauma and violence against Black bodies.
And how are you showing the Black body in your artwork, or what are you trying to convey?
I'm showing it in the most beautiful way that I can. So rewriting history, one goal of this series is to never, ever, ever victimize my subject. So the women are never going to be victims. And you know, even in one piece where there's the whip marks on the back of the dress, Madame Bouvard's painting, it took me some time to decide to put that on the dress. I needed to reconcile that, because it was always this dance, this communication that I was having it's important to talk about that, but if I put it on the dress, do I now suddenly victimize my subject? And I made it work in a way where that didn't happen. But that's the goal in how I celebrate the Black body, is to not victimize them.
What piece has any of these pieces been emotionally hard to work on?
I would say all of them. Yeah, all of them. I talk about rape. I talk about slavery. I talk about the fact that our culture was pulled away from us. It's all these little ripple effects of enslavement. And because I'm forced into that space to think about what my ancestors went through, it's always going to be extremely rough. Yeah.
Was there ever a moment when you kind of had to be like, I don't think I can do this? And if there was a moment like that, what pushed you forward as an artist?
No, I never thought that diving into that space of sorrow was something to prevent me from doing the work. If anything, it propelled me forward, and it was like, okay, this has to be talked about. And I felt empowered. I don't have the personality that is at the, maybe I'm not in a march, maybe I'm not necessarily on camera, speaking out. My voice is through the artwork that I create. I'm an activist in that way. And so the ability to be able to use my voice to speak out in that way really allowed me this sense of pride. I felt like I was, participating in some way, which is important. I think that we all need to participate in some way to change things.
And can you take me through step by step of how you conceptualize these pieces? Like literally step by step, like a moment where this is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is how because you said you didn't sketch or anything like that.
Right. It usually starts with a story. So because I'm a conceptual photographer and I'm a storyteller, that's where it starts. And once I figured out the story that I want to talk about or tell, then research starts. The work is heavy in research, either reading or just looking at museum catalogs just to study the fashion, because there's so many layers to the body of work. It requires that I try and get it as right as possible. And once I've done the research, the construction part starts. And that's where it takes the most amount of time because there's no sketching. I'm building as I'm thinking about it as I create, and I'm in this space of, adding and taking away. And my model usually only sees me once or twice throughout the entire process. Using paper allows me some freedom to be able to work in a way where I don't have to measure on my model too often. And then, then it's showtime.
Let's see, I'm gonna try something else. And then, I'm just reading from the camera. What have your friends and family's response been to your work, especially what's in the exhibit today?
Friends and family have been amazingly supportive. It doesn't stop. They're excited, they're happy. My sister is often having conversations with me about the work, because the work is developing. And with that, I'm also developing. I'm also constructing the way I think about things and the language that I use to describe it and to talk about it. And so my family members are really good for that. They're really good for helping me talk my way through that and learn about the process. So it's great.
And you said you get your inspiration, my brain's jumping, but from stories. Can you tell me some of the stories that you've pulled from?
No, I haven't pulled the inspiration from stories. They're stories that I want to tell. So it's always going to be history, right? So if we're talking about cotton and slavery, we already know what that story is. So that would be an example of where I'm pulling my inspiration from the stories. It's always going to be history based. And but otherwise, the inspiration when I'm looking and doing research is also looking at the gowns. It's really looking at what they were wearing, how it was worn, and really trying to get the fashion correct.
And how difficult has that been?
There's definite, there's times when it's been hard because a lot of times in these paintings, they don't show the back of the dress. So you kind of have to make it up as you go. So, you know, where the paintings don't show the details of the gowns, you hope that the museum catalog has a dress from the painting that you can reference that shows the details. If it doesn't exist, then it's really just a lot of interpretation. So the beginning part of the series really started that way. I want to say the first two dresses are just a mixture of different periods because I hadn't decided if I wanted to do replicas or not. But then as the series developed, I decided I really wanted to do replicas. So Marie Antoinette's dress is a replica. The Conquistador piece, that's also a replica. And that's where I am now, is working from the replica standpoint.
And is there anything? I think I had a story. I had a question in my head, and then it disappeared. Let me see. Can I ask another? Yeah, you can always talk. Okay. So can you talk a bit about the influence that your Afro Caribbean roots have had on this specific exhibit?
That's a great question. As a Haitian woman, I always try to insert something about Haiti. Haiti is extremely important to the series because what I didn't say earlier is that this series is also about identity, analyzing my own identity as a Black woman, which means that being Haitian is really important to that. And talking about the Haitian Revolution. And so this period is important to that as well, because some of these dresses are during that time of the Haitian Revolution. You would see this kind of dress. And so I always try to insert. So Toussaint Louverture is in one of them peeking out from behind her ear, speaking. Sometimes I insert the veve into the garment itself. And sometimes I paint the figures of Haitian revolutionaries. And so it's, being a Haitian woman is really important and inspiring to the creation of this work.
Probably. So can you talk a little bit, you mentioned a couple of specific details, like the revolutionary leaders and other specific parts of Haitian culture inserted into the pieces. Can you expand on those a little bit more? Like explain to, I guess, an audience who wouldn't know what those are.
Well, I would like to, but because Haitian culture is